We're looking at a place in western Montana called Camas Prairie. And you see some hills in the foreground and you see a basin in the background, right? Okay, right here on top of this hill and down on the side here, you see that there are some quarrying operations. Those are quarrying gravel, because everything you're looking at here, this whole landscape between the hills, are these large masses of gravel, trillions of tons of gravel. And you're gonna notice down here a series of ripples.
Oh, okay, I see that.
You start seeing the ripples on the landscape. Piece of land like a tongue coming out. That's a delta. You know what a delta is? It's when a river comes into a body of water and it's carrying sediment. And because the river is moving along swiftly, it's carrying the sediment, but when it comes into the standing body of water, it slows down and it drops its sediment. It builds a delta. The whole city of Portland, for example, is built on a giant delta, right? New Orleans is built on a delta, right? Okay, so what we're seeing there is a delta. And then in front of it, we're seeing rippled landscape. So
rippled landscape that looks exactly like the beach looks.
That's the thing, it's fractal, because this is the whole mystery of this, that this happens at a scale of inches on beaches and a scale of hundreds of feet here.
Right here in the middle, you see a massive delta.
Yes.
Spewed out like a big tongue, splayed out. And then right down here, you start seeing the ripples. And there's a farmhouse. You see the farmhouse there? Now those ripples are, the tallest ones are about the height of a 5-story building.
Whoa. How bizarre. These things, they're the size of a 5-story building. What is that, like 70 feet or something
50
like that? 50 feet?
50
okay.
feet.
So those are 50 feet high. And how much water?
We'll get to that. Let's see the rest of it.
And these are just dirt, right?
They're well, if you dig into one, what you're going to find is they're a massive. Okay. Yeah.
Whoa.
Look at this.
This is crazy.
This is totally crazy. This is one of the craziest things you'll ever see.
This is
right
these ripples, the repeated ripples in an area where there's nothing else like it.
This is the fingerprints of the flood. That's what it is.
Wow. Where can someone look at this? How does someone look at this?
In real?
This right now, this what we're looking at.
Well, my colleague Brad Young, and I think he's got it on the website, Geocosmic Rec.
This is mind-blowing.
And I think you made the crucial point, Joe, which is that we can understand what this is because we can see it on any beach. We can see how water flows receding across a sandy medium will produce ripples. But here, they're on this unbelievable scale where they're hundreds of feet long and 50 feet high, where they dwarf houses, and they're lying all across. And what that tells us is that a huge water flow went across this plain and did this.
Seeing it from this perspective above, which is a rare perspective unless you're in a plane or a helicopter or something, you get a chance to look at it this way, you really get a better sense of what it is. If you were on the ground there, you'd probably say, oh, look at all the hills.
It's hard to see.
You don't quite get the impression. Now, we did visit this location, and to that day it was overcast, so you don't quite get the effect like you do when a low sun angle. Really helps you to see what's going on in the landscape.
Can I ask you, is there a dispute to this? Is there a,
No, nobody disputes it.
Nobody disputes this is from a flood?
Not anymore.
Wow.
No. In fact, it was this JT Pardee.
Let's be clear. Nobody disputes that it was caused by massive water.
The water here, Joe, that did this, the way to visualize this is to, again, begin to think a tsunami. You have to think tsunami because tsunami is the closest scale of water flow that we've experienced in modern times. No river flood has even approached this.
Right.
You know, no flood in any floodplain.
Nothing that we can put into perspective.
Right. The closest we can get to it is a tsunami. But even there, you got to picture the tsunamis that we've experienced in the last decade and a half, in Indonesia and Japan. When they made landfall, those tsunamis were roughly between 20 and 50 feet, depending on where you were relative to the oncoming wave and how far distant you were from it. Here, what you have to visualize is a tsunami sweeping over the land that's over 1,000 feet deep. That's what happened here. And we know that because we can trace the high water marks on the hillsides are clearly left. The high water marks are clearly etched into the hillsides. So we now know, based upon the study of the ripples, and the water here was moving down. It's filling this basin. It's rushing in a great tsunami from the north of fresh water, meltwater, coming off the ice sheet. And it's sweeping down over this land at probably 200 or 300 million cubic feet per second, which is an inconceivable amount of water. It's many times in excess of every river flowing on Earth, flowing today all at once. It's beyond that many times. 10 or 20 times beyond that.
One of the trippier things about water is that water in itself is kind of fractal in some sort of a weird way. When you look at the actual molecules of water, it's almost like we don't distinguish it as being a fractal thing because we see it as like this moving flow. But if you're looking at the actual molecules of water, a cup of water that you dip your fingers in, which is seemingly completely innocuous, becomes this massive element of change when the volume is 1,000 feet high and it's just rolling over with massive amounts of weight behind it. It's that same stuff.
Massive amounts of weight. Enough
Very
weight
bizarre.
that it's actually causing seismic responses.
I can only imagine.
Yeah,
I mean, how much weight are you talking about that can create these 50-foot high walls? But what's fascinating to me is that we don't have a scale like in our minds as a reference, like the difference between that little cup and these gigantic waves that you see that surfers travel by jet ski to get to, off of, I believe it's Mexico.
Right.
You ever seen those massive waves? They go way out, miles out to get to these crazy waves, and we ride them in. They're like 60, 70 feet high. Like that's the comparison, almost like a glass of water to those waves, and then that to this.
It scales up, it scales up, it scales up, and at a certain point it can change the whole story of civilization.
Almost doesn't compute. Like you can intellectualize it, but it's almost not computing.
One of these flood flows here is 3 orders of magnitude greater than the largest measured modern flood. In other words, over 1,000 times greater. In terms of peak discharge or volume, you would have to scale up at least 1,000 times greater than any modern measured flood to get to the smallest, really, of these flows here. Because this is just one place, one locale on 5 states where you can trace literally an ocean of fresh water sweeping across the entire Pacific Northwest, pretty much washing away anything that was there.
It's almost like we have a defense mechanism built in where we ignore how vulnerable we really are. Like we put it, maybe that's one of the reasons why people are so reluctant to really go deep into studying asteroidal impacts.
I think it is, yeah.
Or even to pay attention to this stuff. Like that this could happen.
And this is, I mean, those are not two separate subjects, because this is the result of the comet impact on the ice cap. This is why I feel that the research in this field is so vital.
Okay, right there. Yeah. Now here, notice.
This is crazy. That's a beach.
Oh, yeah, but it's a beach. It's a beach for giant monsters. Is what it is. You can see in this here that you've actually got 3 massive currents converging here. Do you see that? Over here on the right, you've got a massive current coming in that would be from the west. And then we would be standing looking down current. Of course, the drone, I'm guessing here, is about 200 feet in elevation. So the top of the water was another 800 to 900 feet above this perspective right here. And it's moving very, very fast. And it's sweeping down into a river valley that's down in those mountains you see in the distance. And from there, it's being carried down and joining up other equally as large floods coming in from other valleys. And all of this is happening at once, and it's covering 5 states, basically. And that's just one region that's being affected by this sudden catastrophic melting of the ice sheets.
We are dealing with the largest flood that ever occurred on Earth. It's as simple as that.
This is insane. I mean, it's insane to look at.
And it happened here in North America, and it happened 12,800 years ago, and its story has yet to be fully told.